slaughtered by the police. In fact, the first 2 days.
What a disgusting lie.
You are the disgusting person
lie.
who supports ethno-supremacism.
This is why people call you a stooge and propagandist for the regime.
Exactly. You're the stooge for the Zionist regime.
We did nothing wrong. No peaceful protest.
Listen, Professor Marandi and Piers Morgan have crossed paths on Piers Morgan Uncensored multiple times before. Typically, their discussions, although featuring sharp disagreements, remain surprisingly composed and civil. This time, though, an entirely different scenario unfolds. What appears to be a standard debate escalates into a head-on clash. Piers begins to push Professor Marandi aggressively, not stopping at challenging his points, but also questioning his credibility, his impartiality, and whether he's truly ready to criticize his own government or simply rushes to its defense whenever it suits him. The tension is palpable right from the get-go. Neither side concedes, and the exchange becomes significantly more heated than any of their previous interactions. We're going to dissect the entire altercation from beginning to end, and once we're through with the clip, I'll share my candid opinion on who presented the stronger argument, who evaded the tough questions, and what this debate truly exposes beneath the surface. And just a quick note, I'm aiming to reach 1,000 subscribers before the week wraps up, so if you appreciate incisive breakdowns and no-holds-barred analysis like this, subscribe now and help us hit that milestone. All right, let's dive in.
So Professor Mohammad Marandi is a self-described independent academic who nonetheless traveled with the Iranian delegation to the previous talks in Islamabad, and he joins me now from Tehran. Professor Marandi, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you very much for having me.
So where are we here? The President of the United States on Friday was pretty much bringing things to a conclusion. He felt that Iran had agreed to most of the terms laid down, particularly giving up enriched uranium and so on, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But as we sit here now for this conversation, it appears that they're not even going to turn up at the peace talks. What is your understanding on that, first of all?
Well, everything that he said was fake. The Iranians agreed to nothing. And he just puts out information on Truth Social, and later on he's possibly going to say that the Iranians promised everything and now they're not doing it, and so we'll have to bomb Iran. And then people like yourself and others in the Western media will continue to demonize Iran and to attack anyone who defends Iran, and we'll have another war.
How long can Iran sustain more warfare, and in particular economic warfare involving the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, if Iran can't get its energy out whilst also depriving other people of theirs, how long can it economically sustain that kind of thing?
Well, we do have to remember, because Western media doesn't put it this way, but the United States and the Israeli regime started this war. It was completely unprovoked. And 300, 400 Iranians were murdered in this round. And this is not even the first war. This is the second war that they waged on us in less than, in less than a year. So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it's because, first of all, it was never fully closed. The Iranians closed it to a lot of the shipping by countries that were hosting US bases. And I think if you were in Iran's place, you did the same. Those countries in the Persian Gulf that assisted the United States in waging war against the people, in Kuwait, the Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, without them, the United States and Trump could not wage the war. So their shipping obviously is not going to have priority. But the strait wasn't fully closed. The Iraqis were able to use it. The Iranians used it. The Chinese used it. Others who weren't waging war against Iran were using it. But we had a ceasefire after Trump at the beginning of the war said that Iran must surrender, unconditional surrender. And of course, that didn't happen. And then ultimately, after almost 40 days, the United States accepted the Iranian 10-point plan as the framework for discussion. And of course, Trump didn't do it in practice because he's dishonest, and so is the Trump regime. After that, we had a ceasefire. In that ceasefire, Iran was supposed to open up the Strait of Hormuz to ship to more ships, including those countries that host bases. But the Israeli regime was supposed to adhere to the ceasefire, and they didn't. And so for 10 days, Iran did not open the Strait of Hormuz to extra ships because Netanyahu was busy slaughtering people. And then when finally he was forced to accept the ceasefire, Iran said they're going to open up the strait for extra shipping. And then Trump said, but he's going to keep the siege on Iranian ports. Well, that's a violation of the deal too. So if he's going to impose a siege, the Iranians are not going to open up the strait. So from day one, when the United States carried out this aggression, to the ceasefire and after the ceasefire, this crisis belongs to Trump and Netanyahu.
So what happens next?
Well, ultimately, Trump is going to have to recognize that he is not going to get at the negotiating table what he could not get on the battlefield. He lost the war. The Iranian people were able to stand up a joint war where the Trump regime, the Netanyahu regime, and a coalition or proxies in the region along with them were assisting them, and they failed. So why should Iran submit to the United States? If the United States wants a peace agreement with Iran, then it has to be a balanced agreement. But if Trump thinks that he can impose his will like an emperor and an imperial power, well, the revolution 47 years ago put an end to that. That's what the revolution was about. And that's what the Iranians are going to continue to do. They're going to preserve their dignity and sovereignty. That's something that the United States, especially under Trump, is not used to seeing. But Iran is different from other countries.
We had a bizarre situation last week where the Iranian president issued a statement supporting the Catholic Pope Leo over attacks made against him by President Trump. And he said he condemned the insult to Your Excellency over the desecration of Jesus, the prophet of peace and brotherhood, is not acceptable to any free person. I wish you glory by Allah. Many people were taken aback by this because in the World Report of 2026, Iran Human Rights Watch specified that Christians, along with other religious minorities, face systemic discrimination in law and practice in Iran, and noted a significant wave of arrests targeting Christian communities following regional conflicts in mid-2025, often based on unfounded accusations of connection with Israel. So people are struggling to see why your president would be quite so vocal in his support of Catholics, given that backdrop.
Well, I think it was clear that you would find some way to support aggression and to demonize Iran because that's what you do. And of course, that's fake. We have many churches in Iran. You refuse to travel to Iran. I propose to you to come to the country. You could go visit the churches and you could go.
Well, you've refused to travel to London. Come to London, no problem. I'll see you in London.
I've lived. Well, right now they're busy bombing us. They're busy destroying our country and murdering our people. And I prefer to stay in Tehran under airstrikes to stand up for my people. And I've been to your country before, but you've never been here. I've been proposed that you read a book, Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Leverett, to learn a thing or two about Iran, but I'm pretty sure you didn't bother to buy it. But in any case, the Christian, the Christian community in Iran is doing very well. They have MPs in parliament. And unlike Christians in Lebanon, whose churches are being destroyed by the Israeli regime, and unlike the synagogue in Tehran, which was bombed by the Israeli regime, all Iranian churches and all Iranian synagogues are well protected by the people of Iran. You don't want to say that, you don't want to believe that, because it goes against that narrative that you've built in your mind, and that actually it's the Iranians that are the good guys. They're the ones who are the anti-genocide people, and your governments are the pro-genocide people. It's been like that for for the whole
Well, yeah,
47 years.
the reality is you always like to make this ad hominem as fast as you possibly can, and you prop up and defend a regime that has for 47 years oppressed its people and been a provider of funds and arms to a number of terror groups, including Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. So whilst I'll take moral lectures from some people, you wouldn't be top of my list for the morality lecture, Professor. So try and avoid the ad hominem all the time, because it slightly devalues your information, which I do find useful, about the Iranian perspective on what is happening with this war right now. And just to be clear about what I said about Christians, I was quoting this from the Human Rights Watch in its World Report. It wasn't my view, wasn't my information, wasn't my investigative work. It was the Human Rights Watch. You might have a problem with that. You might say that it's all untrue. But I'm quoting a reputable organization who say that your regime has been oppressing Christians. You say otherwise. People can make their own minds up. I can only assume that if there were substantive peace talks that are about to happen imminently, you might be involved in a delegation. Am I right to assume that?
Well, first, I have to respond. I don't really want to lecture you because I don't think you're the sort of person who would ever change. You're so narrow-minded that you refuse to set foot in Iran. And I'm sure you haven't read the book that I offered you to read. It wasn't written by an Iranian or someone on the Iranian payroll. It was written by two Americans, one of whom is Jewish. But in any case, of course I don't accept Human Rights Watch. Go and look at where the funding comes from. Iranian people know and respect the Christian community here. If you go to any church in Tehran, if you go to any synagogue in Tehran, you see that there are no police officers there. Why? Because no one will ever think about threatening the Christian and Jewish community in Iran. But that same Jewish community is bombed by Israel. Their synagogue is destroyed by Israel. I haven't seen Human Rights Watch condemn that. And it's because they're anti-Zionists. And the Christian community, by the way, had martyrs in this war because of the bombing. And in Lebanon, they've murdered Christians. And I'm pretty sure Human Rights Watch is not too troubled about the carpet bombing in Beirut, but we'll leave it at that. But yes, I may go with the delegation. They have not asked me to go. If they do go, right now the Iranians have not decided to go to Pakistan, to Islamabad, because of the behavior of Trump and the Trump regime.
So we have a situation here where YouTube has terminated the channel belonging to Explosive Media, the pro-Tehran group that got quite infamous for its Lego-themed animations mocking President Trump and the US war effort. Let's take a look at some of their stuff to remind viewers.
I don't understand why you let the people down and make them feel so grand. Yo. Secrets leaking, pressure rising, your fake savior era Iranian. Yo, you posted yourself as Jesus, crown on your head, healing the sick. Nah, you dropping bombs.
So the Iranian government's explicitly framed the ban as a violation of free expression, claiming the move was a deliberate attempt to suppress the truth and shield the American administration's false narrative from competing voices. And as some people...
Pause for a moment. We need to dissect what's really going on here, as this is no longer just a discussion. It's a full-on clash between two distinct realms. Up to now, we've witnessed the exchange between Professor Marandi and Piers Morgan over the war's justification and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. However, Piers is now shifting the focus to something far more intimate, the information battle. By mentioning these Lego animations and the prohibition of Iranian media outlets, Piers is maneuvering to corner Marandi on the issue of free speech. But pay attention to Marandi's tactic in response. He doesn't just stand by the content, he goes on the offensive against the Western platforms themselves for erasing his digital presence. This provides a captivating insight into modern conflict, where the contest isn't solely over physical land, but also plays out on YouTube, Instagram, and 10th. What's truly fascinating is the irony here. You have a Western journalist accusing a regime of repressing its citizens, while the representative of that regime claims the West is engaging in systematic censorship and launching information strikes. It compels the audience to question, is anyone genuinely objective, or are both factions simply sticking to their own narratives? In this next part, the stakes heighten as the debate on their government's ethics intensifies, so keep an eye on their body language. Let's dive back into the video.
People have pointed out that's pretty rich coming from a regime that controls the press and kills protesters, and in your case, for example, makes you so supine to them that you dare not express any criticism of your government whatsoever, do you? You don't, because I've invited you to, and you can't do it.
Oh, yes, I live in fear of the government. Absolutely. And I'm supposed to, when I'm on your show for like 10 minutes and then you're attacking Iran throughout and saying all sorts of nonsense, I'm supposed to sing along with you? No, of course not. And by the way, my Instagram account was deleted. My Facebook account was deleted. And so was many of my colleagues and students. All of the Iranian media is sanctioned. Everything, government, semi-government, privately owned, that are major media outlets in Iran, they're all sanctioned. So, and it's not just Iran, Lebanese, Yemeni, Iraqi, any media outlet that doesn't mimic the Western narrative, or at least try to live alongside it without much criticism, it's banned. And so, and that's why people in the West can't hear anything from Iran. However, in Iran, all you have to do is turn on the TV, and you have hundreds of Persian language media outlets funded by Western governments that are beaming into our homes day and night.
Okay, can you, out of interest, can you name me a high-profile comedy show in Iran that mocks the government in the same way that you have in America and the UK?
I don't know. There are different programs. I haven't watched television for years. I only watch the news maybe 3 or 4 times a week.
I'm only
on
after
Iranian
one.
television. But you can right now, people can search, and underneath the comment section, people can put links to them. But by the way, many of them are banned on YouTube. I myself have many interviews on RT that have all disappeared. My interviews on Press TV, they've all disappeared. They're gone forever.
Well, the reason for that, I presume, is because you're perceived to... Well, the reason for that is you're perceived... Well, hang on. You're perceived to be a propagandist for the Iranian regime, okay?
Oh,
and
okay.
I think I asked you last time, the best way to test this is I can be very critical, as I have been this morning on social media, about my government and my Prime Minister, that I've demanded that he resign, right? I've done the same about President Trump when I disagree with him. But could you right now, speaking from Tehran on this show, can you think of one critical thing you would level at your leadership in Iran? Just give me one criticism of them.
Everything, every day. If you just come to... I invited you to come to Iran. Press TV...
Well, give me one now.
Okay, I'll tell you. Press TV has said they'll broadcast live a debate between you and me for hours. Live
that
in
wasn't
Tehran.
my question. That wasn't my question.
Well, then
my question
you can
was,
come to Tehran.
give me one to prove that you do not live in a place which suppresses freedom of speech. I'm just asking you, as a critically minded professor who presumably likes to, explore all possibilities of thought and process.
Presumably.
Give me one criticism. Give me one criticism of your current regime, your current leadership. Give me one. One thing you don't agree with about them.
The government in Iran has problems with inflation. It has problems with crime. It has problems with jobs. It has problems with inflation. It has all sorts of problems. But my government does not help the Israeli regime carry out genocide. And you have never said that you do not accept ethno-supremacism. Because if you say you don't, that means you do not accept the legitimacy of the Israeli regime. Do you accept?
You have never accepted.
Do you accept?
You have never accepted. Hang on.
Tell me. Do you reject ethno-supremacism? Do you believe that a regime that is based on ethno-supremacism is illegitimate or not?
Well, I don't exactly know what you mean. What do you mean?
Is a regime that is based on the concept of ethno-supremacism, is it legitimate or not?
Well, what I would repeat to you is what I've repeated to people about Israel for the last year. The Israeli government, not the people of Israel or the country, but its current government under Bibi Netanyahu has been doing a lot of things which I strongly disagree with. Yeah.
Do you reject a regime that accepts, that carries out a regime, not an administration, not a government, a regime that is based on ethno-supremacism?
Well, I literally last week...
That is why Hezbollah dies.
Let me answer.
That's why people in Hezbollah die for the people of Gaza.
Fine. If you let me answer, only last week I attacked the Israeli government and Ben-Gvir in particular for the way they brought in a new law which would only kill Palestinians who they deemed terrorists, execute them with a death penalty, but not Israelis. Right? I thought that was outrageous and appalling and probably an example of what you're talking about.
You know, if you were talking about apartheid South Africa like this, or if anyone was, you would be attacking them. If anyone had given me the same answer when I said, you accept a regime that's based on racial superiority or on racial preferences or hierarchy, you would have been totally aggressive and rejected it outright.
I've literally just told you. You didn't obviously watch it.
You didn't.
You obviously didn't watch it. I've literally just told you. I've literally just told you that last week I did exactly that.
About a law. That's a law. I'm talking about the regime itself. That law is only brought about because of the nature of the regime. That's why people rape others, Palestinians in prison, and they're treated as heroes.
And what about your regime?
What
about your regime?
My lovely
What about
regime
your regime of theocratic fascists who murder thousands of protesters for protesting against them? What about that?
I know. Okay, let me go. First of all, you're hiding the fact that you could not answer this question by saying this. However, I'm glad you raised this. This nonsense was all created in order to justify this war. Trump himself, just a couple of weeks ago, said that he sent weapons to the so-called protesters. How is it possible, if those protests were organic and they were spontaneous, that they needed weapons? How did he know who they were? How
many protesters did your regime kill?
How did he know?
How many did you kill?
How did he know that they even used weapons, that they could use weapons? It was because
how many of your protesters did your regime kill?
Because he was afraid. You're afraid to accept the fact that he knew, and his intelligence agency knew,
answer my
and
simple
the Israeli
question.
intelligence agency knew that these were not
how many thousands of protesters? How many thousands of protesters did your regime slaughter in January?
No peaceful protesters. No peaceful protesters were slaughtered by the police. In fact, the first 2 days.
What a disgusting lie.
You are the disgusting person who supports ethno-supremacism.
This is why people call you a stooge and propagandist for the regime.
Exactly. You're the stooge for the Zionist regime.
We did nothing wrong. No peaceful protesters got killed.
No,
and
I
you
didn't
smirk
say
as
that.
you say it.
No, you're fabricating. I said they did not massacre peaceful protesters. The people that your government supported and gave weapons to, they carried out an armed insurrection. 3,117 people were killed, including hundreds of police officers and a couple of thousand innocent bystanders by people that your government armed. Your governments armed these people. Your governments murdered them. But you want to distract attention away from your own crimes, just like you're not willing to say anything about ethno-supremacism in Palestine.
Okay, we'll leave it there. The truth is people can see through it, Professor Marandi.
I'm sure they will.
I need to have a candid conversation with you all for a moment. As a Muslim father residing in New York City, discussions like this resonate with me in a unique way compared to others. When you become a dad, your outlook shifts dramatically. War, politics, and international conflicts stop being mere topics for debate. They become real-life situations affecting families. You start to think about children, fathers protecting their households, mothers worried for their kids, and regular folks caught in a mess created by governments, military might, and political schemes that they never wanted to join. That's what made the debate between Piers Morgan and Professor Marandi so striking to me. Despite all the bickering, interruptions, and heated arguments, there's a significant issue lurking beneath that many are overlooking. If you're familiar with their past debates, you know they often clash yet generally keep a respectful tone. This exchange was anything but calm. The dynamic shifted rapidly. It was apparent from the onset that this wouldn't be an academic debate. It became personal and confrontational, feeling less like a discussion and more like an ambush. What really caught my attention is how Piers confronted Professor Marandi differently than he does with certain Western leaders. Let's be honest, people notice patterns. Even when Donald Trump makes controversial statements, the reactions are often measured, careful, and restrained. However, with Professor Marandi, the manner shifts entirely. The tone hardens, interruptions heighten, and questions turn more hostile. This matters because journalists should hold all parties to the same standard. If you're going to challenge one party fiercely, extend that rigor to all. Accountability is crucial and should be universal, regardless of whether someone is Western, Middle Eastern, conservative, liberal, American, or Iranian. Another highlight was when Professor Marandi challenged Piers to actually visit and see things firsthand instead of debating from a studio far removed. I respected that. A massive problem in today's media is that discussions occur from a distance, debates about countries without ever visiting them, talking about civilians they've never met, and discussing war-torn areas as casually as sports. Meanwhile, people are enduring real pain. Kids are losing parents, parents are grieving for their kids, families are being torn apart, communities are living in terror. So when someone says, "Come see for yourself," it resonates with me. There's also a wider issue no one admits. Trust is crumbling. People no longer fully trust their governments or mainstream media. And can you really blame them? Governments, be it Western or Middle Eastern, have lied before. Intelligence agencies have misled. Media outlets have pushed agendas, leaving regular folks questioning, who do we believe? The uncertainty is dangerous because when trust dissolves, every side accuses the other of spreading propaganda. A frustration I had during this debate was how often it veered away from the central issue. When discussing war, bombing, international tension, and human suffering, the talk drifted to unrelated political symbolism that felt out of touch with current realities. Here's where context becomes key. In countries under threat, citizens might criticize their government internally yet band together against foreign interference. History consistently reflects this. It's not about agreeing with your leadership to oppose foreign intervention. Understanding this dynamic is often missed in the West. During conflict, national identity, fear, and the quest for survival become deeply emotional. As a father, this makes me ponder deeply, what if my kids lived under such terror? How would I react if external forces threatened our community? Is it fair to expect intellectual responses while families are overwhelmed with fear? Such human elements are often neglected in TV debates. The power of media framing is immense. The way questions are posed already influences how viewers perceive answers. Framing can nudge audiences toward conclusions before a participant even speaks. This is why interviews hold such weight. Millions absorb not just information, but also the emotional context, who appears aggressive or defensive, who faces more interruptions, who gets ample time, who looks credible or suspicious. All of which sway public opinion. Ultimately, I'm not insisting you take Professor Marandi's side or back Iran. I'm not suggesting any government should avoid scrutiny. Every government needs to be interrogated and held responsible. But if these dialogues are going to matter, they need to be genuine, fair, and rooted in humanity instead of deteriorating into political performances. Real people suffer while powerful individuals argue on TV, and that's a perspective I refuse to lose focus on. If you value depth over superficial media discourse, subscribe and engage with this community. I'm striving to create a forum for authentic discussions that don't blindly follow narratives. I'm also aiming for 1,000 subscribers by week's end, so if you've been tuning into these videos and find them worthwhile, please take a quick moment to subscribe. It truly helps. Now I want to hear your thoughts. Did Piers Morgan handle this interview justly? Was Professor Marandi evading responsibility? Or was the whole conversation framed to thwart a balanced discourse from the start? Share your thoughts in the comments.